Hi guys, welcome back to another video. In today's video we're going to have some Division 20 ranked online gameplay in the women's strawweight division using none other than Weili, and we're going to be coming up against the higher level Rose Namajunas, as you can see from the gamer tags on the bottom right and all my opponent's banners. My opponent's been in Division 20 across multiple divisions, is currently in Division 20 as I am, so extremely high level matchup coming into this one here. And obviously in Division 20, one thing to note, of course, is that most fights are going to be 5-round fights unless you get matched with an opponent that's a lot lower down in the ranking system. I believe under Division 14 is when you'll start to face opponents in 3 rounds instead of 5. And of course that just means one thing, is that stamina management needs to be absolutely key. And if you haven't watched my most recent video, which was the hidden gem in the light heavyweight division, which was obviously using Corey Anderson, one thing that I done an extremely good job of there was using stamina management. And with a wrestler it's a bit easier to manage your stamina, because obviously you're not going to be throwing too many strikes. All the strikes you do throw is to set up the takedown, and then once you're on the ground, you obviously, if you're on top, you're not going to be using as much stamina as you would be on the bottom trying to worm your way out. And I can pick and choose what transitions to go for. However, when you're using a striker and you're really not looking to grapple, like I am here, obviously Weili, I'm going to use her as a boxer. I am coming up against a wrestler. It's a bit harder to manage your stamina, but in this video I'm going to showcase how I manage my stamina across this fight. I'm not sure if it goes the full 5 rounds, but it'll be very interesting for you guys to see the stamina levels I end up with in round 3 and 4, because it is pretty impressive. And the one big key is that obviously you can't throw too much volume, but when you do throw, you need to make sure you are hitting your opponent. You can't just be punching there, because that's when you start to lose even more stamina, when you're throwing and you're missing. And you'll see this throughout this fight, because my opponent, when he can't start getting the takedowns, really opts to go for these 3, 4, 5 big flurry punches of combinations, but isn't landing a lot of them. And because he isn't landing these punches, stamina's going even more down. Because he isn't landing the takedown, stamina's going even more down. And one thing I will do religiously is I will work that body, because if you work the body enough, your opponent will get drained. And in a 5-round fight, it doesn't matter if you're losing 3 rounds, if it goes into those championship rounds and you don't have the stamina, you won't be able to take a punch like you could in the first 3 rounds. And you also won't be able to give off that same output. It's really common sense. If you want to take this fight and take your opponent into deep waters, you really got to work the stamina. As you can see, my opponent's really going leg kick heavy here, which is a tactic I usually employ. But with Weili here, I'm going to look to just box. As you can see, beautiful head movement there. Now movement's another thing which really aids to stamina management. If you can move and get away out of these big strikes without utilising too much stamina. As you can see, I just move my head there rather than opting for the big sways. But if need be, I will sway to get away from the fence. But when my opponent has got these takedowns here, when you're looking at the fight, obviously it's only the round 1, but when my opponent has got these takedowns or gone for the clinch takedowns, nothing's come from it so far. Yes, my opponent's got me down, but no damage has been taken, no submissions attempts either. So I'm in a fairly comfortable position. I'm fairly confident going into the next couple rounds. I've done some good work to the body, and my opponent isn't noticing that his stamina levels are just shooting down. And I'm coming into round 2. If you look at the stamina there, that's about 98%, and that is absolutely perfect. That's exactly where you want it if you're someone that's really trying to manage their stamina, because my opponent right now 100% has lower stamina. There is no way my opponent has the same stamina. As you can see there, whenever my opponent throws that overhand, that gas tank really depletes. And what did I do? I punished him. I went roundhouse straight to the body, and I know that hurt. That definitely zapped some stamina. As you can see, like I was saying, my opponent's going for 1, 2, 3, 4 punch combinations, and then me, I'm throwing the jab, I'm throwing the feeler punches out there, and then I'm throwing the straight to the body. I'm moving left and right to try to stay off the centre line, and I'm being careful because I know my opponent wants this fight to go to the ground, and when it does go to the ground, I've just got to remain calm. I don't want to go for too many transitions, because once your opponent starts denying transitions, obviously not only do they build GA, but your stamina gets zapped. And you cannot, when you're fighting a wrestler, or any fighter for that matter, but in particular a wrestler, let your stamina disappear and let them have the advantage, because if they have the advantage, grappling is going to become 100 times easier for them. The submissions attempts are going to come easier, and overall it's just going to be an extremely hard fight for you. So knowing that my opponent does want to take me to the ground, stamina levels, stamina management is of extreme importance in this fight here. And as you can see, I'm trying to manage distance well, trying to be in and out of the pocket, trying not to stand still or be on the center line for too long, because I don't want to take too many punches. But when you're using Weili, you've got to take a punch in order to give a punch. Sometimes I really need to step into that range, obviously just because Rose is the taller and rangier fighter here. And my opponent gets a good takedown of around a minute 50 on the clock, 2 minutes, in a great position here. And as you can see, I remained calm, was just throwing punches, and I transitioned to the side, which was actually least favourable. I let my opponent get side control, which is an extremely dominant position, because had I tried to transition to the other side, which would have put me in backside, I think, yeah, backside of sprawl, that would have been more advantageous, but my opponent would have predicted it, because that's exactly where he would have probably wanted to go. And as you can see here, I'm just denying transitions, and I'm letting my opponent lose his stamina. As you can see, take my opponent's back, and I opt to get up. And here, one thing I'd like to expand on there is that I am a stand-up fighter in this fight here, which is why I opted to get up, because I don't want to risk staying there. My opponent ends up reversing the position, I get caught in a submission, and I end up losing when I have the opportunity to get up, because you have to stick to your gameplay. That's the game plan. That's the most important thing, because if you are a striker, even if you have better grappling than your opponent, and you know it, but they're using a grappler, the longer you stay on the mat, the more you're playing in their realm, the more opportunity you're giving them to come back into the fight. And that's exactly what you don't want, especially on ranked when you're in these higher divisions, because there are very good opponents that have amazing submissions, and once you get caught in one, you're going to end up hating yourself, because you could have won that fight if you just got to your feet. And coming into round 3 here, as you can see, stamina levels again, 98%, and that is just phenomenal coming into round 3. It's extremely rare for your stamina to be in such a high place, and right now when I am fighting my fights online, one thing that's been fairly consistent is my levels of stamina. I'm really trying to maintain a high level of stamina. I've noticed that I've been winning a lot more fights due to it, because like I said, my output can be higher in the later rounds, which is easier to get a finish because your opponent's already going to be weathered, and when obviously they don't have stamina, it's going to be harder for them to take shots. And I'm trying to intercept my opponent's clinch attempts with the straight and then a hook, just trying to add some damage onto it. My opponent's really going for my legs here, and I'm not too worried. The only annoying thing is obviously it may lead to my opponent getting easy leg health events in the later rounds, but it also puts my opponent in a dangerous position, because when my opponent is throwing these leg kicks, sometimes throwing them in boxing range, so I can look to clip him with something. My opponent's leg health also isn't in the greatest position, because I have been checking kicks, and I can't stress the importance enough of checking leg kicks. It really deters your opponent from throwing them. And one thing I haven't done a good job of this round is I'm taking a lot of head kicks, but fortunately my head health's in a good position. My opponent doesn't have stamina, so they're not really resulting to anything, but it's something that I need to be wary of, because you can only take a certain amount for a certain amount of time. We're not all Vittori against Costa, because I don't know how he survived that onslaught of kicks in the 5th, but that's a different story. I'll definitely use Vittori and Costa in a video and talk about that fight, because that was absolutely insane. But as you can see, I've been fairly aggressive this round. I've been pushing a lot more my opponent. That's just because I know I've got the stamina advantage. I'm starting to break the block here. And again, as soon as my opponent's hurt, I go to the body. As soon as I see my opponent has no stamina, I go to the body. And this is exactly what is going to win me the fight, is if I keep on this game plan of working the body, and I'm mixing now the body uppercuts, and they just take so much stamina out of you. It's incredibly draining. My opponent gets the takedown here, gets me into here, and this stack guard is an incredibly dangerous position, but I remain patient, and then we get up. And that's been the theme of this fight, is that my opponent will get me down and I'll find a way up. And it's hard for my opponent, because obviously my opponent needs to wrestle, because right now the fight is not going his way. But when he is getting me to the ground, it's just not going exactly how my opponent would want it to go. He's not getting the control time, submission attempts, ground and pound, because we're just getting up with ease. And it's going to be extremely demotivating for my opponent. And now I'm starting to mix in the teep kicks every now and then. The only reason I didn't mix in more was because I didn't want my opponent to sidestep it and then get caught with a head kick. You've really got to regulate when you pick to throw certain strikes. And if I throw a teep, my opponent sways and then results in a takedown. Like I said, it could cost me the fight, so I'm only sneaking them in where possible. And now, round 4, look at the stamina levels again, probably around 95%. And that's his. It's so good. It's so good, especially in a fight with strawweights here, because obviously your volume, your output's going to be naturally a bit higher because their stamina, it just feels like it lasts for forever. So obviously you're going to throw a bit more. But my opponent now is really in the gutter in terms of stamina. Doesn't have too much left, and I've got so much to work with, so I can really explode into combinations. And as you can see, I haven't given up. I'm still going to the body. Now I'm mixing these teeps, trying to really control the pace of the fight. I don't mind when my opponent throws these 4 or 5 punch combinations, because often or not they're not doing too much damage and it's just wasting my opponent's stamina. And it can just, if this fight goes into the 5th, you'll see that there's just a huge stamina difference. Like it's insane. My opponent just doesn't know what to do. But like I said, you've still got to remain calm. You've got to pick your shots. Yes, I have a huge stamina advantage. I could probably just rush my opponent. But if I rush in there and get clipped, my whole 4 rounds of good work has just gone down the drain. And those prior 4 rounds are setting up the basis in order for me to win the fight. All the work from round 1 to this round currently of working the body, picking the right strikes to throw, trying to throw with a higher land rate. I don't want to miss too many strikes. This is all added up, and my opponent right now doesn't really have the answers. And yes, my opponent's throwing these leg kicks there, as you can see, and they are starting to do damage. That's one thing my opponent started to do, which, yeah, you can see it was starting to physically affect me because both my legs aren't in a great position. However, I'm not too worried, just because there's only 2 minutes left of this round, and then we've got another round to follow in which I can really bombard my opponent if need be. But again, I'm picking the range and I'm dictating the pace this fight is fought at, because I don't want my opponent to be in control. And look, as you can see here, really pressing, trapping my opponent against the cage. I tried to go for the body uppercut. My opponent done a good job there. And my opponent is just throwing back in order to just get me away, not throwing with any intent of getting me out of there. It's more throwing just to keep themselves safe from me blocking their, breaking their block. And there's the teep again to the body. And my opponent's starting to block these body shots, so I'm mixing in more headshots here just to give my opponent something to think about. We get the stun here, try to go to the body, because like I said, the body work never stops. And again, my opponent's stamina's flashing. And as you can see, I'm still being extremely aggressive. Check the leg kick there, and then deny there, and then my opponent does a good job of then getting up. So coming into the next round, you see my opponent does a little taunt there, doesn't even have the energy to taunt. And again, another extremely good round. We're denying a lot of these takedown attempts, and I can either wait for this to go to decision, because I feel fairly confident that I would win the decision here, but you never know with the judges. So if there's an opportunity for a finish in this 5th round here, I will go for it. And as you can see, stamina's around 85%, which is very good for the 5th round. My opponent's is definitely a lot less. And again, my opponent's just going for these clinch attempts, because that's all my opponent can do right now. And I'm ripping to the body. As you can see, land the hook there, stuns my opponent, then bang to the body again. To the body, just relentless body work. And my opponent's taunting here. I think that's more out of frustration, not knowing what to do. We get the knockdown here, do a bit more head damage, knee to the body just to zap some stamina even more, go to the body again, and as you can see, look at the onslaught of pressure here. And my opponent is throwing, again, not with any real intent to get me out of there, just wants to breathe. My opponent just wants room to breathe here. Going to the legs, but like I said, that's perfectly fine, because it's not really threatening me right now. We're right in the boxing range here. Beautiful head kick, and Rose just falls flat. I'm not going to jump on the ground because I don't want to risk my opponent catching me in a submission in the 5th. Flashbacks of Silva versus Charles Sonnen. As you can see, my opponent, just look at the posture, just doesn't want to be in there anymore, despite the taunting. and I'm being very, very calm and calculated. I'm not taking any unnecessary risks, even if it looks like I'm going to just run over my opponent right now, which I probably could. But all this hard work can't go to waste, because the finish will come, the opportunity will present itself. As you can see, another great finish, and I probably could have jumped on top there, and that would have finished the fight. Go to the body again. There's the taunt for my opponent. Teep, just to zap some stamina, even though I know there's none there, but just to throw a bit more damage. Body, head, good night. So that was this fight here was really just to showcase how I manage stamina when using a striker, and well played to my opponent. As you can see, my opponent was very aggressive with these takedowns. My opponent didn't make it easy, just made some crucial mistakes. Obviously, the not blocking the body shots and the stamina management was just perfect from my behalf, so it made it incredibly hard for my opponent. The scorecards and the stats are going to be coming up now, so you can see how the fight was scored. Thank you for watching the video. Please like, comment and subscribe. If you are new, turn on the bell to be notified when I upload. Thank you. I'll see you next time.